So every week or so, whenever, as long as we're on time, and I have a few extra minutes, and we are on time this week, then I will talk a little bit about ethics, the history of it. And what I do is I tie the history of ethics with the history of mathematics, because they go along in lockstep pretty much for the last few thousand years, which I find really amazing. And since you're engineers and have appreciation for mathematics, hopefully you'll think it's amazing too. If you're a liberal arts class, this wouldn't go over like a dead balloon, you know, talking about the history of mathematics. But with you guys and gals, it should be fairly interesting. If not, let me know. So if you want to talk about the history of ethics and go way back, you have to start with the history of morality. And it's amazing. This is the first amazing fact that I'll throw out at you, is that morality developed in the human species simultaneously all over the world in unconnected societies between the years 500 BC and 1500 BC. So if you think of the time scale of the Earth, that's a spark. Why did all of a sudden Chinese, Indians, Gilgamesh, Babylonia, Egypt, Israel, why did all of them develop a moral sense, a fairly unique moral sense for them, common, at the same time? We don't know. Max Weber, pretty famous philosopher, called this time the axial age. So if you Google it, it'll pop up. The axial age is when human species developed a unique sense of morality, which we still hang on to today. Now, it's not that we started respecting the dead or things like that, or helping each other out like chimpanzees do. We've been doing that for, I don't know, 50, 100,000 years. But over the axial age, the unique idea developed that was not known before that time, that there's another life after this one, and we are in this life to progress, to become better and better towards perfection. That's the idea that was uniquely presented in the axial age. And the religions of the axial age presented that to their Taoism, Confucianism in Egypt, Hinduism, Buddhism in India, the Middle East, all the Middle Eastern religions that we know of course, Judeo-Christian, not the Christian, but the Judeo-monotheistic, they all came about at the same time. And they all, if they didn't preach, they all thought about this life as being a preparation for something else. There's a value to living a good life as opposed to just being here. And we have no idea why that developed. But there was one place in this time frame that developed a unique look towards morality. And that's the Western world, Greece. In Greece, well, let me just say, in the other places, as far as I know, in Egypt and India, China, the priests basically said, here's the laws. You do this. You don't do this, we'll kill you. Here's the taboo, here's the not taboo. Hammurabi says, here's your set of laws, you do it, or you die. In Greece, for the first time, a bunch of guys got together, unfortunately, they were just guys at the time, and they said, let's think about this. What should we develop as a moral society? How should we develop? Well, you know, and now we're speaking about Socrates and Aristotle and Plato and Archimedes, all these Greeks that go way back, Diogenes looking for the honest man, and all the discussions that you probably had in one of your other classes. But maybe they didn't emphasize in the class how unique that was. It wasn't just starting Western society. It was saying we're not dealing with revealed law, that someone's giving us what to believe, whatever it might be. We're dealing with people trying to think about what the law should be. Think about it. That's unique. And it developed in a unique way. And we're still struggling with the concept today. So, again, I'm dealing with the history of ethics, so if you're associated with a particular religion, belief, or some of the East or the West or whatever, I love all those traditions. I'm not going to attack any of them. It's stupid what they did. But I want to focus on the rational one, because that's the one that defines the ethics that we live with today in the Western world. And that's the one that we're having problems with today in the Western world. So what happened in Greece way back when, around 1000 BC or so, the time of Homer, was they came up with the idea that mathematics is the way for perfection. So theology was linked, melded, welded into mathematics. In other words, mathematics was abstract, it's perfect. The world is perfect. We live in a perfect world. The heavens are perfect, rationality is perfect, everything's perfect. And mathematics expresses that in a unique way in our Grecian culture. I'm speaking as an ancient Greek now. So the way mathematics developed peaked out on a fellow named Pythagoras. And what do we know Pythagoras for? What do we know him for? Yeah. He started the YMCA song. No, Pythagorean theorem, right? That's wrong. The Pythagorean theorem was known well before the time of Pythagoras. Well before his time. I'll tell you why we think of him that way in a minute. But that's not why he's known. What he's known for, what he did, was a guitar string. He took a guitar string, and he put his finger along in a certain space, and he plucked it and said, does that sound perfect to you? And always at this one spot. Doesn't that sound perfect? And no matter who he asked, he said, yeah, that's it. That's the spot. And then he went and he drew a rectangle. And he said, what should be the relative dimensions of the side and the base? Is there not a perfect one? And they derived the relationship between the circumference and the sides that resulted in the perfect rectangle. Called the what? Called the golden mean. And like I told the first class, if you put the golden mean, give me an expression for the golden mean on your readiness check, I'll give you an extra credit. I'll give you an extra few points, a couple points for the golden mean. Google it, it'll pop right up. So when the Greeks built their buildings, the Parthenon, if you go look at a Greek building, they're all built with the same golden mean. Most of the buildings in the Enlightenment were built the same way. They're all built on this golden number, that Pythagoras. And that's what we should remember him for, is developing the golden mean and the idea of perfection being a rational place. Pythagoras, being a mathematician, the best mathematician of his time, was also the chief priest. Because remember, mathematics and theology was wedded. So the people were given laws that the world was perfect, and here are mathematical laws. Now, the common person believed in Zeus and Athena and all those great mythology stories. I'm not attacking those either, but at the upper levels of society, it was mathematics that ruled, not the Greek and the Roman gods. It was mathematics. The number system that the Greeks used was based on an Egyptian system. The Egyptians had a base 10 system based on pictures. They had a base 10 pictures based on pictures. Different societies had different number systems. The Mayans had a base 20 system. Why do we have 360 degrees in a circle? No one has yet answered this. I've been teaching this course many years. Why do we have 360 degrees in a circle? Isn't that a weird number? Why? Well, ancient mathematicians in Iraq, in Babylonia at the time, very good mathematicians, they had a base 60 system. And 60 squared was 3,600, and that's how they divided the horizon for the sun, for all these holidays, the solstice and everything. So they divided. So we have inherited the Babylonian 3,600 into 360 degrees in a circle. That's where that comes from. So we have these ties that go back into the ancient past from all these number systems. But the point I was trying to get to is when Pythagoras worked the right triangle, what we call the Pythagorean theorem today, those numbers in that ratio were perfect. They were perfectly rational, just like the world is. I'm speaking again like an ancient Greek. They're perfectly rational. Now, if someone pops up, who's going to disagree with that? One of you disagrees with it. You say, that's not right. And I say, well, why isn't it right? And you'll say, well, that diagonal, that right triangle, I can prove to you that that's not a ratio. And your name is Hippomus. And you have a competing series of priests, of mathematical priests, who are saying that this is not a rational number. You are threatening the taboos that created our Grecian society. Don't you see that? You personally are a problem in this society. So Hippomus and his group, and Pythagoras and his group, and this is why he's known, had a huge fight. And what happens when you fight about morality? What happens in a religious war? Everybody dies, right? So Pythagoras' group attacked Hippomus and killed him. They killed him. And Hippomus' group got mad at Pythagoras, and they were going to chase him out of town and reestablish. So there's this religious war going on based on mathematics. And they caught Pythagoras in a bean field, outside of a bean field, just outside the bean field. And the reason that Pythagoras didn't escape was because in his world, philosopher mathematician was perfect. He didn't have sex or have any children. And beans reminded him of testicles, which is the source of human life at the time. So he would not go into a bean field. So Hippomus' followers, they caught him and they killed Pythagoras. So there was a huge religious upbringing at the time based on mathematics, which ended up in us remembering the Pythagorean theorem as associated with Pythagoras as opposed to the guitar string. It was because of the tumult that was created after that. And that ethics then was picked up by the Romans, and the Romans took the Grecian numbering system, which was based on the Egyptians, and they converted their numbering system into the X's and V's and I's that you probably learned with the Roman numbering system. So that's kind of the history. I mean, that's the start of it. That's the start of ethics. You can see how it always is religiously based if you go back far enough. There's nobody, but the Greeks were the first people who tried to reason through. But as they tried to reason it through, they got into their own little rational war. And you would think that, well, we're past that today, aren't we? I mean, I could show you the IEEE ethics, and you'd all agree that that's exactly what we should be doing. But let me give you a story. This true story. 1997, September, right 4 years before 9/11, we produced the world's fantastic missile cruiser, the Yorktown, sailed out of Langley, out of the East Coast, and it was $100 billion would be today, 100 million. I mean, $3 billion maybe today is what it would be. A huge, huge amount of money. 80,000 horsepower, right? Could basically destroy a country. The Yorktown can destroy any country in the world by itself, just this one ship. It got out about 10 miles from shore on its first cruise, went dead. The whole thing went dead. Nobody could start it. No one on the ship. So they called in a Tiger team of engineers from NASA and from Langley. They went out to the ship, worked all day, 3 days on the ship. Dead. Tugboats come coming in, government contractors come out, hook up the Yorktown, pull it into port. 6 months. 3 to 6 months it took to find out what was wrong with the Yorktown. It was divided by zero. One of the computers had a divide by zero in it. Couldn't find it. I mean, they suspected it after a few months, but they still couldn't find it. It basically wiped out. F-16, first time it flew on an aircraft carrier was flying overseas. No, he was flying air refueling overseas. And I think they were flying to Australia. This is, again, 20, 30 years ago. And they flew over the equator. And they were on autopilot. And as they flew over the equator, one by one, the airplanes turned upside down. They flipped upside down. Of course, usually wakes up the pilot if you're upside down over the ocean in the equator. And they were going divide by zero. And it was never caught in the northern hemisphere. They never caught it until they flew to the north, to the south. So these little epsilons, as Dr. Stanisek used to tell me at Purdue, these little epsilons are all over, just waiting to bite you in the ass. And they're based on a belief that the world is rational. We have created the Yorktown. It is the greatest, most perfect vehicle. You know, we have this system. We have this car. It's going to drive you, Google says, by yourself, anywhere you want to go. Just say, I want to go home, and it'll take you home. You can do your texting while you go home. So there's epsilons running through this system. So the rationality that Pythagoras ran into way back when is still with us. And it bites us in the ass every once in a while. It bites the Toyota people when they had the throttle go full forward, and they still don't know why it does that. It bites the airplanes that flew out of Rio de Janeiro. Pitot system went bad, iced up, killed everybody on board. They're still trying to figure out exactly what happened. It was aggravated by the pilot, but the airplane would have crashed either way. So what caused it? Why is this irrationality still with us 2,000 years later? Why haven't we put all this behind us? I mean, we know about the religious wars. Let those, let them advance to where we are, but we are still fighting the war that Pythagoras fought when it relates to ethics. I wish I had an answer, but I'm not going to give you an answer because I don't have one, but it's a challenge. Don't forget about ethics when you go into the real world. I can tell you with assurity that the more important the project that you work on, and the more it affects lives, and the more it affects jobs, the more ethics will be an issue in your life. So, that's it.